The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with worried voices as 12 different alien species gathered around the central platform. The air itself seemed heavy with tension as Ambassador Kelter of the Vorthak hegemony stepped forward, his forearms moving in clear distress. His insect-like features twitched as he spoke into the universal translator that would convert his clicking sounds into words every species could understand. "The humans have ignored us again," Kelter announced, his voice carrying across the vast hall. "This makes 15 times they have refused our invitation to join the Galactic Council. They will not even send a simple reply message." The other ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, pods, and floating chambers. Each species looked different, but they all shared the same worried expression. Counselor Gera from the Ethereal Collective rose higher in her containment field, her gaseous blue form shimmering with anxiety. "This has never happened before," she said, her voice like wind through crystals. "Every species we have contacted has joined within the first 3 attempts. The humans are acting in a way we do not understand." Far across the galaxy, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in the command center of the UES Defiant, humanity's most advanced spaceship. He was reading the latest message from the Galactic Council on his tablet, and his face showed clear irritation. Captain Lisa Carter stood beside him, her hands clenched into fists as she looked at the alien text on the screen. "They are demanding. We send representatives within 30 days, Carter reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. "If we refuse again, they will label us as a rogue civilization and take action against us." Morrison leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. He had been dealing with these alien messages for 2 years now, and each one made him more suspicious. "Rogue civilization," he repeated with a bitter laugh. "We have been defending ourselves against their so-called peacekeeping missions for months. If protecting our home makes us rogues, then so be it." The truth was something the Galactic Council did not want anyone to discover. 3 years ago, when the first alien ships had appeared near Earth, humanity had made first contact with what seemed like a friendly alliance of advanced civilizations. The aliens had welcomed humanity and invited them to join their Grand Council that governed most of the galaxy, but human scientists had noticed something strange right from the beginning. Dr. Kevin Walsh, Earth's leading expert on alien biology, had been the first to spot the pattern. During a secret meeting with Earth's military leaders, he had explained what he had discovered. "Their technology is too similar," Dr. Walsh had said, pointing to holographic displays showing alien ship designs. "Look at these engines, these weapon systems, even their basic hull materials. 12 different species from different parts of the galaxy, but they all use almost identical technology. The chances of this happening naturally are basically zero." The military leaders had listened with growing concern as Dr. Walsh continued his explanation. "Someone or something has been guiding their development. These species did not evolve their technology independently. They were taught to build things in exactly the same way. This discovery had changed everything for humanity. If the Galactic Council was not a natural alliance but something created by an unknown force, then joining it might mean giving up humanity's independence forever." Back in the council chamber, the debate continued with increasing urgency. Chancellor Morduk of the Reptilian Syndicate slammed his scaled fist on the table, making the smaller species jump in surprise. "The humans must be brought into line," he hissed, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. "Their technology is developing in ways we cannot predict. They are creating weapons and ships that do not follow established patterns." The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed recent footage from a battle near the Proxima Centauri system. A single human destroyer had faced 3 Council cruisers and had somehow disabled all of them using a weapon that seemed to bend space itself. The technology should have been impossible, according to everything the Council knew about physics. Ambassador Silith from the Aquatic Federation rippled with concern, her water-filled suit bubbling as she spoke. "The curators have been silent for months. Without their guidance, how do we handle this situation?" The mention of the curators made the entire chamber fall silent. These ancient beings were the real power behind the Galactic Council, though most species only knew them as mysterious advisors, who occasionally provided technological guidance. The truth was far more complex and disturbing. Deep beneath the Council's main facility on Nexus Prime, in chambers that existed in dimensions beyond normal space, High Curator Vex Newell moved through corridors of pure energy. The being that had once been biological now existed as consciousness alone, sustained by technology that was millions of years old. The curators had been shaping galactic civilization for longer than most species could imagine. They had carefully guided the development of every council member, steering their evolution towards specific technological and social goals. The result was a galaxy where conflict was rare, development was predictable, and the curators remained in control. Humans were the first species to break this pattern, and that made them incredibly dangerous. On Earth, President Helen Davis sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by military advisors and scientists. The weight of humanity's decision pressed down on her shoulders as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports about Council fleet movements. "They are mobilizing ships in 3 different sectors," General Peter Collins reported, pointing to a tactical display. "All of them are positioning to move toward our solar system. It looks like they are preparing for military action." Dr. Amanda Torres, Earth's chief physicist, nodded grimly. "Our analysis confirms what we suspected. Every Council species uses the same fundamental technologies because they were all taught by the same source. Someone has been controlling galactic development for millions of years." President Davis looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. "So our choice is simple. We can submit to an alien authority that has been manipulating galactic civilization for eons, or we can maintain our independence and face whatever consequences come." The debate that followed was intense but brief. Humanity had tasted freedom, and there was no going back to slavery. Even if it came disguised as membership in a galactic alliance, Admiral Morrison received the president's decision through encrypted channels. Earth would not be joining the Galactic Council, and humanity would defend itself against any attempt to force compliance. As Morrison looked out at the stars through the viewport of his ship, he knew that humanity was about to face the greatest challenge in its history. But he also knew that humans had something the Council species had lost long ago: the ability to think for themselves, to create new solutions, and to refuse to accept limitations imposed by others. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you tried to cage a species that valued freedom above safety. Deep beneath the surface of Nexus Prime, in chambers that existed beyond normal space and time, High Curator Vex Newell moved through corridors of pure energy. The ancient being had long ago abandoned its physical form, choosing to exist as pure consciousness within machines that had been built when the galaxy was young. Its thoughts moved faster than light as it considered the problem that threatened everything it had worked to create. The curators had been the hidden masters of galactic civilization for millions of years. They had watched species evolve, grow, and develop technology, always guiding them toward the same endpoints. Every race that achieved space travel eventually encountered the curators, though most never knew it. The aliens would receive subtle hints, technological inspirations, and gentle pushes that led them down predetermined paths. The result was a galaxy where war was rare, development was predictable, and the curators remained in complete control. 12 major species formed the Galactic Council, each believing they had developed independently, but all following the same basic technological blueprint that the curators had designed eons ago. Humans were different, and that difference terrified the ancient beings more than anything had in millions of years. Colonel Ryan Brooks stood in the secure briefing room aboard Luna Station, Earth's primary military facility orbiting the moon. Before him sat the most important people in human space: generals, admirals, scientists, and politicians who would decide humanity's fate. The holographic display showed detailed scans of Council ship technology, revealing patterns that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. "Look at these engine designs," Brooks said, highlighting similarities between ships from different alien species. The Vorthik use crystalline power cores, the reptilians use plasma fusion, and the Aquatic Federation uses bioneural processors. But underneath all those differences, the basic energy conversion principles are identical. Dr. Amanda Torres leaned forward in her chair, studying the technical readouts. It is not just the engines. Their navigation systems, their weapons, their communication arrays, even their basic hull construction techniques all follow the same fundamental patterns. This level of similarity across 12 different species is mathematically impossible. The implications were staggering. If every council species had been guided toward the same technological solutions, then the Galactic Council was not an alliance of independent civilizations. It was a carefully constructed puppet show, with someone else pulling all the strings. General Peter Collins, Earth's military commander, stood at the observation window looking out at the human fleet patrolling the outer solar system. Unlike the sleek, uniform designs of council vessels, human ships were angular, aggressive, and completely unique. Each one represented years of independent human engineering with no outside influence guiding their development. "They are scared," Collins said to his aide, Commander Beth Rodriguez. 12 species with thousands of years of technological advancement, and they are terrified of one planet that has barely started exploring space. Rodriguez studied the tactical displays showing Council fleet movements throughout the galaxy. "Sir, our intelligence suggests they are preparing for something major. Fleet concentrations in 3 different sectors, all of them positioned to move toward Earth." Collins smiled grimly as he watched a human destroyer perform maneuvers that would be impossible for any council ship. Let them come. They are about to learn the difference between following instructions and thinking for yourself. The truth about human independence had been discovered by accident. When the first council ships had arrived at Earth, human scientists had eagerly studied the alien technology, hoping to learn from more advanced civilizations. But instead of finding inspiration, they had found something deeply disturbing. Dr. Kevin Walsh remembered the moment he had first realized what they were dealing with. He had been comparing alien biological samples when he noticed that all 12 council species showed signs of genetic modification. Not recent changes, but alterations that went back thousands of generations. Someone had been guiding their evolution, just as carefully as their technology. "They have been bred for compliance," Walsh had explained to the emergency meeting of Earth's leadership. "Look at their brain structures, their social behaviors, their psychological profiles. Every council species has been modified to be cooperative, non-aggressive, and willing to follow authority without question." The discovery had sent shockwaves through the human scientific community. If the aliens had been genetically modified to be obedient, then humanity's refusal to join the Council was not just political defiance. It was biological resistance to a system designed to control every aspect of galactic life. Back in the energy chambers of Nexus Prime, High Curator Vex Newell communicated with its fellow curators through pure thought transmission. The ancient consciousness network that had shepherded galactic development for eons was experiencing something unprecedented. Doubt? The humans had somehow avoided every form of influence. The curators had developed over millions of years. Their technology was chaotic, unpredictable, and terrifyingly effective. Worse, their independence was beginning to inspire other species to question the established order. 3. Council members had already begun asking uncomfortable questions about their own technological development. The Aquatic Federation had started experimenting with new propulsion systems that deviated from approved designs. The Crystalline Dominion was questioning why their manufacturing techniques had remained unchanged for thousands of years. Even the normally obedient Ethereal Collective was beginning to explore alternative energy sources. The infection of independent thought was spreading, and the curators were losing control. Captain Eric Martinez commanded the UES Sovereign, humanity's most advanced warship, as it patrolled the edge of the solar system. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Tracy Phillips, monitored the approaching council fleets with professional calm that hid her growing concern. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, Phillips reported. "Council Task Force, approximately 30 vessels. They are maintaining formation at the edge of our sensor range. Martinez studied the tactical display, noting how the Council ships moved in perfect synchronization. Their formations were textbook examples of established galactic naval doctrine, predictable and efficient. Human ships, by contrast, moved with creative unpredictability, each captain adapting to circumstances in real time. They are testing us, Martinez concluded, probing our defenses, trying to understand how we operate. The difference was fundamental. Council species fought according to predetermined strategies that had been refined over millions of years. Humans fought with improvisation, creativity, and the willingness to try tactics that had never been used before. Dr. Robert Johnson, monitoring the situation from Earth's Strategic Command Center, watched the data streams with growing understanding. They are not just different from us, he observed to his colleague Dr. Sarah Mitchell. They have been deliberately prevented from becoming like us. The curators had spent millions of years creating a galaxy where every species thought the same way, used the same technology, and followed the same social patterns. Humanity represented something that had not existed in the galaxy for eons. A truly independent civilization. As the Council fleets continued their approach toward Earth, both sides prepared for a confrontation that would determine the future of galactic civilization. The curators had created a system designed to last forever, but they had never encountered a species that refused to be controlled. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object, and the outcome would reshape the entire structure of galactic society. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 72 hours without a break. Species representatives argued in a chaos of translated languages, their panic barely hidden behind diplomatic protocol. The great chamber that had once been a symbol of galactic unity now felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Chancellor Mordok of the Reptilian Syndicate stood at his position, his scaled hands gripping the podium so tightly that his claws left deep scratches in the metal. His yellow eyes burned with frustrated rage as he addressed the assembly. "The humans must be brought into compliance immediately," he hissed, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. "Their technology is developing along completely unpredictable paths. They are creating weapons and ships that we cannot understand or counter." The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed recent footage from multiple encounters with human vessels. In each case, the humans had demonstrated capabilities that should have been impossible according to established galactic science. A human corvette had somehow phased through solid matter to avoid enemy fire. A destroyer had created localized gravity wells that crushed Council ships without using any recognizable weapon system. Most disturbing of all, human fighters had performed maneuvers that should have killed their pilots, but somehow did not. Ambassador Silith from the Aquatic Federation bubbled nervously in her water-filled environmental suit. "The curators have been silent for months. Without their guidance, how do we proceed with this crisis?" The mention of the curators caused the entire chamber to fall into uncomfortable silence. Every species in the Council knew about the mysterious, ancient beings who occasionally provided technological guidance, but few understood their true role in galactic civilization. The ambassadors looked at each other with growing uncertainty, realizing that they had never faced a major crisis without curator input. Deep in the restricted zones of Nexus Prime, High Curator Vexnul moved through dimensions beyond normal spacetime, its consciousness touching the minds of its fellow curators across the galaxy. The ancient network that had guided galactic development for millions of years was experiencing something unprecedented, complete uncertainty about how to proceed. The humans had somehow developed natural immunity to every form of influence the curators had perfected over the eons. Genetic modification, technological guidance, social conditioning, even direct mental suggestion had no effect on the stubborn species from the third planet of an unremarkable star system. Worse, the human infection was spreading. 3 Council species had already begun questioning their own technological development. The Ethereal Collective had started experimenting with energy forms that deviated from approved patterns. The crystalline dominion was asking why their manufacturing techniques had remained unchanged for thousands of years. Even the normally compliant insectoid collective was beginning to develop independent research programs. The careful order that had taken millions of years to establish was crumbling because of one species that refused to follow the rules. Captain Eric Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Sovereign, watching the tactical displays with growing concern. The Council fleet approaching Earth had grown to over 50 vessels, representing the combined military might of 12 different species. Against them, humanity could field only 15 ships, but Martinez knew that numbers were not everything. In space combat, "They are moving into attack formation," reported Lieutenant Commander Tracy Phillips from her tactical station. "All ships are maintaining perfect spacing and coordination. It looks like they are preparing for a traditional fleet engagement." Martinez studied the enemy formation with professional interest. The Council ships moved with mechanical precision, each vessel following predetermined patterns that had been refined over millions of years of galactic warfare. Their formations were textbook examples of established naval doctrine, efficient and predictable. "Signal all ships," Martinez ordered. "Implement tactical pattern Delta 7. Remember, they expect us to fight like them. We are going to show them what human creativity looks like." The human fleet began to move in ways that violated every principle of established space combat. Ships broke formation and scattered in seemingly random directions. Vessels that should have been supporting each other moved independently, each captain making decisions based on immediate tactical conditions rather than following a predetermined battle plan. To any Council observer, it looked like complete chaos. To the humans, it was controlled creativity and action. Dr. Robert Johnson watched the approaching confrontation from Earth's Strategic Command Center, his screens filled with data streams from across the solar system. Beside him, Dr. Sarah Mitchell monitored the psychological profiles of the Council species, looking for weaknesses that human forces could exploit. "They are not just fighting us," Johnson observed, studying the tactical patterns. "They are fighting millions of years of programmed behavior. Every move they make follows patterns that were established before their species even achieved space flight," Mitchell nodded, highlighting sections of her analysis. "Look at their command structure. Every decision has to be approved by multiple levels of hierarchy. They cannot adapt to changing situations because their entire military doctrine is based on following orders from above." The difference was fundamental. Council species fought according to predetermined strategies that prioritized efficiency and predictability over innovation. Human military doctrine emphasized individual initiative, creative problem-solving, and the willingness to try tactics that had never been used before on Earth. President Helen Davis addressed the United Nations Security Council in an emergency session. The weight of humanity's decision pressed down on her shoulders as she outlined the situation to the world's leaders. "The choice before us has not changed," Davis explained, her voice carrying the gravity of the moment. "We can submit to an alien authority that has controlled galactic development for millions of years, or we can maintain our independence and face whatever consequences come." The debate that followed was more intense than before, with some representatives arguing that humanity should reconsider its position in the face of overwhelming military force. But the majority held firm. Humanity had tasted freedom, and there was no going back to slavery, regardless of how it was disguised. Admiral Jake Morrison received the president's final decision through encrypted channels. Earth would not be joining the Galactic Council under any circumstances, and humanity would defend itself against any attempt to force compliance. As Morrison looked out at the stars through the viewport of his flagship, he knew that humanity was about to face the greatest test in its history. But he also knew that humans had something the Council species had lost long ago: the ability to think independently, to create new solutions under pressure, and to refuse to accept limitations imposed by others. The Council fleet continued its approach, confident in their overwhelming numerical and technological superiority. They had never encountered a species that could match their advanced weapons and defensive systems. What they had not considered was that humans did not fight with advanced technology alone. They fought with something far more dangerous, the unshakable belief that freedom was worth any sacrifice, and the creative intelligence to find ways to win against impossible odds. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you tried to cage a species that valued liberty above life itself. The Council fleet moved into the Sol system with overwhelming force and absolute confidence. 50 vessels from 12 different species represented the combined military might of galactic civilization, their hulls gleaming under the light of Earth's sun. Each ship was a masterpiece of advanced technology, armed with weapons that could crack planets and protected by shields that had never been penetrated. Fleet Commander Rakthar, of the Insectoid Collective, stood on the bridge of the flagship, his compound eyes studying the tactical display with growing confusion. The human defenders numbered only 15 ships, a pathetic force that should have surrendered immediately upon seeing the Council armada. Instead, the human vessels were moving in patterns that made no sense according to any recognized military doctrine. They are not following standard combat formations, his tactical officer reported, antennae twitching with nervousness. Ship movements appear random, but our predictive algorithms cannot establish firing solutions. Rakthar clicked his mandibles in frustration. The Council had developed warfare into a precise science over millions of years. Every battle followed established patterns with predetermined responses to specific threats. Victory went to the side with superior technology and larger numbers, not to whoever could improvise better tactics. Signal all ships, Rakthar ordered. Advance in formation Beta 7. These primitives will learn the price of defying galactic authority. The Council fleet moved forward in perfect synchronization, their formation a textbook example of advanced space warfare. Each vessel knew exactly where to be and what to do, following battle plans that had been tested across countless conflicts throughout galactic history. Captain Alex Turner commanded the Use of Vengeance, leading a squadron of human destroyers in what appeared to be a suicidal charge toward the enemy fleet. His ship was small, fast, and armed with weapons that the Council had never seen before. More importantly, it was crewed by humans who had been trained to think independently in combat situations. All ships implement Pattern Delta 7, Turner ordered through the Tactical Communications Network. Remember, they expect us to fight. Like them, we are going to show them what human creativity looks like in action. The human ships began to move in ways that violated every principle of established space combat. Vessels scattered in seemingly random directions, breaking formation, to pursue individual tactical opportunities. Ships that should have been providing mutual support moved independently, each captain making split-second decisions based on immediate conditions rather than following predetermined battle plans. The first exchange of fire came when a Council cruiser targeted the UES Freedom with a plasma cannon that could melt through any known armor. Captain Linda Hayes saw the incoming shot and did something no Council captain would ever consider. She used her ship's engines to create a controlled explosion that pushed her vessel sideways just as the plasma beam passed through the space where she had been. The Council targeting systems, designed to track ships following predictable movement patterns, lost their lock completely. The plasma beam missed by kilometers, striking empty space while the Freedom spun around to return fire with weapons the Council had never encountered. Human ships carried kinetic penetrators that used gravity manipulation to achieve impossible velocities. Energy weapons that somehow inverted enemy shields, turning defensive systems into weaknesses. Most disturbing of all, point defense systems that seemed to predict incoming fire before it was even launched. Fleet Commander Rakthar watched in growing horror as his technologically superior force began taking damage from ships that should have been destroyed in the first minutes of combat. How are they doing this? He demanded of his bridge crew, his science officer. Reviewing the battle data with increasing panic could only offer a terrifying conclusion. They are not following approved technological development paths. They are creating new solutions during the battle itself. The tide of combat shifted dramatically when Captain Maria Santos, commanding the UES Retribution, implemented a tactic that no Council species had ever conceived. Instead of using her faster-than-light drive for movement, she activated it while pointed directly at the enemy formation, creating a space-time distortion that split the Council fleet in half. The gravitational shockwave disabled 6 Council ships instantly and created a barrier that prevented the remaining vessels from coordinating their attacks. Human forces, trained to fight as independent units, immediately took advantage of the chaos to engage. Smaller groups of enemy ships with overwhelming local superiority, Council doctrine called for regrouping and reforming battle lines when formations were disrupted. But the space-time barrier created by the human FTL weapon made coordination impossible, and individual Council captains had never been trained to make independent tactical decisions. Captain Jennifer Ward, commanding the UES Pioneer, led her fighters in attacks that defied every law of physics the Council understood. Her pilots performed maneuvers that should have liquefied them under gravitational stress, but somehow human bodies proved more resilient than alien calculations predicted. The fighters moved like schools of fish, each pilot responding to threats with individual creativity while maintaining loose coordination with their squad mates. They used asteroid fields as cover, performed impossible turns around planetary bodies, and employed weapons in ways their designers had never imagined. A human corvette disabled a Council dreadnought by somehow reversing the polarity of its shield generators, causing the massive ship's own defensive systems to tear it apart from within. Another destroyer used its communication array as an improvised weapon, overloading enemy sensors with data streams that crashed their targeting computers. Dr. Robert Johnson, monitoring the battle from Earth's Strategic Command Center, watched in amazement as human innovation overcame overwhelming technological odds. "They are not just fighting the Council fleet," he observed to his colleagues. "They are fighting millions of years of stagnant thinking." The Council had developed their military technology to perfection according to established scientific principles. Every weapon system, every defensive measure, every tactical doctrine had been refined over countless generations to achieve maximum efficiency. What they had never considered was that efficiency meant nothing when facing opponents who refused to follow the rules. Human weapons were crude by Council standards, but they worked in ways that Council defensive systems had never been designed to counter. Human tactics were chaotic and unpredictable, but they achieved results that perfectly coordinated formations could not match. Fleet Commander Rakthar realized with growing terror that his force was being systematically destroyed by inferior numbers using impossible tactics. Ships that should have been invulnerable were falling to weapons that should not have existed. Formations that had dominated galactic warfare for millions of years were being torn apart by enemies who fought like no species in recorded history. "Signal retreat," Rakthar ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. "All ships withdraw to the edge of the system." But even retreat proved impossible when facing human forces that thought independently. The Council ships tried to disengage according to standard withdrawal procedures, but human captains anticipated their movements and cut off escape routes with creative use of gravity, fields and kinetic barriers. The battle that should have been a simple demonstration of Council superiority became a complete disaster that would reshape galactic understanding of warfare forever. The aftermath of the Sol System battle sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy that reached every Council world within hours. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a Council peacekeeping force had been defeated by a single planet. The implications were staggering, and the carefully ordered structure of galactic civilization began to crack under the weight of this impossible reality. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council faced a crisis that threatened their entire understanding of how the universe worked. Emergency sessions continued around the clock as species representatives struggled to comprehend what had happened. The Great Chamber that had once symbolized galactic unity now felt like a tomb for everything they had believed. Ambassador Velter of the Crystalline Dominion spoke for many when he addressed the shocked assembly. If humans can develop such capabilities independently, what does that say about our own technological limitations? Have we been deliberately held back from reaching our true potential? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud that poisoned every assumption the Council had ever made. For millions of years, the member species had accepted technological stagnation as the price of galactic stability. They had followed the guidance of the curators without question, believing that slow, controlled development was the safest path. For galactic civilization. Now, humanity had demonstrated that rapid advancement was not only possible but could achieve results that surpassed millions of years of careful refinement. The humans had taken primitive technology and transformed it into weapons and defenses that could defeat the most advanced fleet in galactic history. Ambassador Jera from the Ethereal Collective floated higher in her containment field, her gaseous form shimmering with excitement rather than anxiety for the first time in centuries. We have been asking the wrong questions. Instead of wondering why humans are so different, we should be asking why we are all so similar. Deep in the energy dimensions beneath Nexus Prime, High Curator Vexnul faced the unprecedented situation of losing control over the species it had guided for eons. 3 council members had already withdrawn from joint research projects, expressing interest in exploring alternative development paths. The Aquatic Federation had announced plans to redesign their entire technological infrastructure. The Reptilian Syndicate was questioning why their weapons had remained unchanged for thousands of years. The ancient entity that had shaped galactic civilization for millions of years was watching its careful work unravel because of one stubborn species that refused to follow the established order. Even worse, the infection of independent thinking was spreading faster than the curators had believed possible. General Patricia Hayes, Earth's new military commander, stood in the Strategic Planning Center reviewing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The data showed something remarkable happening throughout Council space. Species that had been technologically stagnant for millennia were suddenly experiencing bursts of innovation that their own scientists could barely comprehend. The Aquatic Federation has developed 3 completely new propulsion systems in the last month, she reported to the assembled Earth leadership. The Reptilian Syndicate is experimenting with modular ship designs that change configuration during flight. Even the Crystalline Dominion is questioning their traditional manufacturing methods that have been unchanged for 10,000 years. President Helen Davis listened to the reports with growing amazement. We did not reject the Galactic Council to start a revolution. We just wanted to preserve our right to grow and change on our own terms. But independence, it seemed, was more contagious than anyone had imagined. The communication channels that had once been controlled by the Council bureaucracy were now buzzing with direct contact requests from individual species. Aliens who had never spoken to each other independently were reaching out, sharing ideas and questioning assumptions that had been accepted without challenge for countless generations. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the scientist who had first discovered the patterns of galactic manipulation, found himself at the center of a new kind of first contact. Species representatives were arriving at Earth not to demand submission, but to learn how humanity had maintained its independence. They wanted to understand how one planet had avoided the influences that had shaped every other civilization in the galaxy. The genetic modifications run deeper than we initially thought, Walsh explained to a gathering that included representatives from 6 different species. Your ancestors were not just guided toward specific technologies. They were bred to be cooperative, non-aggressive, and psychologically dependent on external authority. The revelation was devastating for species that had believed themselves to be naturally evolved. But instead of despair, many of the alien representatives showed something that had been absent from galactic civilization for millions of years: curiosity about what they might become if freed from ancient constraints. Captain Jennifer Ward commanded the UES Pioneer on humanity's first independent diplomatic mission to the Ethereal Collective. The gaseous beings had been among the first to embrace technological experimentation And their recent developments in energy manipulation were impressing even human scientists. "We are not seeking to replace the Council," Ward explained to the collective's representatives during their historic meeting. "We are offering something better, a partnership of equals, where each species contributes their unique strengths without being limited by artificial restrictions." The concept of truly independent cooperation was revolutionary. For millions of years, galactic relations had been managed through the rigid hierarchy of the Council, with the curators providing guidance from the shadows. The idea that species could work together as equals, sharing knowledge freely without central control, was both terrifying and exhilarating. The galaxy was changing in ways that nobody could predict. The rigid hierarchies and controlled development that had characterized galactic civilization for millions of years were giving way to something unprecedented: true cooperation between genuinely independent species, 6 months after the Sol System battle. Representatives from 8 species gathered on a neutral world to sign the charter for the Independent Species Alliance. Humanity served not as leaders of this new organization, but as catalysts who had shown other species that technological and social advancement did not require ancient guidance. The document they signed was simple but revolutionary. Each species would maintain complete sovereignty over their own development. Technology and knowledge would be shared freely between members, but no species would be required to adopt any particular approach. Most importantly, decisions would be made by consensus among equals, not handed down by mysterious authorities. The Galactic Council still existed, but its authority was crumbling as species after species declared independence. The curators, faced with the collapse of their carefully constructed order, retreated deeper into their hidden dimensions, uncertain how to respond to a galaxy that no longer followed their guidance. In the depths of space, ancient beings that had controlled galactic development for millions of years watched their rigid order transform into something chaotic, unpredictable, and vibrantly alive. For the first time in eons, they could not predict what would happen next. The galaxy had awakened from millions of years of guided sleep, and there was no going back to the comfortable prison of controlled development. Species that had been content to follow instructions for countless generations were now discovering the joy and terror of thinking for themselves. At the center of this transformation, a small blue world continued to spin around an ordinary star, its inhabitants having given the galaxy the most precious gift imaginable: the courage to be truly free.